Hey everybody, this is Mark J. Ryan, and we're going to do a short, hopefully short. We've got to pick up the kids from school, about a 30-minute podcast, and want to talk a little bit about the work that both Kathy and I have been doing recently, and something that happened today with Kathy as we were going through some back and forth. How would you describe that, Kathy, that back and forth? Anyways, welcome to the Mark J. Ryan experience.
The one that I put up for you all the time. Yeah, I'm here. I'm always on the Mark J. Ryan experience in the background, right? So what do I want to call what just happened?
Yeah, we were kind of going back and forth between some issues.
Arguing?
Arguing a little bit. He did. And part of our, I think what we would call our work, both of us together and individually, is to clear up our crap, clear up stuff that's in the way. And sometimes when you're in the midst of it, it's the hardest time to really take a look at it. But from what I've found in doing coaching and therapy and stuff is that you got to get a little bit of it going. You got to access those neural networks in people and have it there. Because if you just have a concept about what change is going to be like when it actually happens, it doesn't usually happen like that. But if you're in the midst of it, when you're like, no, I don't want to do this. I want to feel like this. And we were kind of both at that place of what we each wanted to feel, and kind of challenge each other to do a little bit of work in the moment, in the heat of the moment. And some pretty amazing things happened to both of us, but especially Kathy.
Really? Just especially me?
Especially you. I thought it was pretty cool.
Huh. I thought something happened for you, too.
Oh, it does. It does.
You're smiling now instead of
smiling,
arguing.
Yes. Well, let's put it this way, that you did the work and you did the release, and from that release it was pretty amazing to watch it, but also to experience it, to feel it in my body and to identify with it. And Kathy was gracious enough in the midst of it to let me suggest a few things to do. And
yes, those were very helpful things.
Yes. How were they helpful?
Distinctions.
Those magic words. I love to talk about distinctions because it really is. We have a tendency to go really big and go global and make it either or. They're both kind of NLP terminology of how we process information and patterns and things like that. And a lot of times if you can chunk it down real small or chunk it up really big beyond the box that you're stuck in, if you can go outside the box or go deeper, we get to space. And from that magical place of space, we find a lot of our resources that are there. And I'm kind of just saying what I experienced, what I thought happened, and how I do work and everything. And maybe, Kathy, you can kind of give us how you feel it, how you felt it, how you experienced it, how you think it happens, or what happened to you. So there was a magical point, kind of a setup as a frame. I say it's a magical point because it was beautiful to watch and to see and to be part of an experience that we had been going back and forth about something for a little bit, and then as it was starting to wind down while it was still there, we both got really honest, and then I just said to Kathy, I said, move your eyes up here. And instead of over there, because I could see she was really accessing with her eyes a certain part of her brain, and the resource part of her brain wasn't activated, and I asked her to move her eyes up to the right, which is NLP visual constructed, where you can construct new things. Whereas the VR, the visual remembered, up left is where we remember stuff. And those parts are usually pretty isolated. And they don't have access to other parts of our brain and our resources and our spirituality of who we are. They kind of lock down and close and batten the hatches, close the box up. Castle locks down the gate, and puts everybody around there to defend it. And Einstein talked about the way we create a problem. We can't undo the problem, and I'm paraphrasing here, undo the problem the same way we created it. So you have to bring in new resources. And through NLP, one of the great things is to be able to look and see where somebody is accessing and what they're leaving out. And if you can help them get to that part that they're leaving out, most of the time they have the resources that they need to get past the issue. And I'm just as guilty, and I look for people. If I can find somebody that's creative and knows what they're doing and can watch that and make me aware of it, I love it. Because I realize that I'm in boxes a lot of times and I don't know how to get out of them. And so when we were going back and forth with Kathy, I think that I could see a big box, and I took a chance, and in the midst of some heat, so shall we say, and said, "Look that way."
And I took a chance.
Yes, and you looked.
And I looked that way, and what I noticed was everything I was angry at you about, and I was trying to explain from the remembered perspective. When I went to the creative, the constructive perspective, I couldn't use the same words. The same words, it wasn't flowing in the same way. I had to communicate. I had to choose different words.
Yeah.
So, for example, I couldn't say, you did blah, blah, blah. I had to say, I don't want to feel guilty that you are feeling a certain way. So that it became, I had to own my own feeling in it rather than saying, you were doing this and you're feeling this way and you're, and being more of a pattern recognizer, I guess, of what was going on with you. When I went to the creative side of my mind, I had the words, I couldn't say those things. It wasn't flowing. And the words that came up were more in alignment with what I was feeling and saying what I wanted to create instead of what I recognized in you on the outside. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Does that make any sense?
Oh, I think that makes perfect sense. I think can we say what the word was?
What?
Attacked.
Attacked?
Yes. It was, so it was a double trigger, and that when I say double trigger is I would start a conversation or start something about a certain thing, and the way I would go after it, it would create a stimulus or response pattern in Kathy where she would go into as if I was attacking her. And then I'm like, my crap was like, oh my gosh, I'm not attacking her. And then I would get upset because, so we were in this lock, over this word attacked. And I said, can we kind of slice it down and can we just do something with this word attacked? When you feel attacked, you go into a certain pattern or a certain pattern grabs a hold of you. And different hypnotic phenomena that happens to all of us. We age regress. We lock down. We go into either-or mentality. It's kind of how we thought more as a kid for safety and survival than we do with adults with resources. And I said, can we work on that word? Can we change that word? That word attacked. I don't feel like I'm attacking you. And I noticed that when you say attacked, you go into a certain process. Now, that's easier said than done. I don't recommend it unless you know what you're doing and you've had some experience like Kathy and I both have, because even though we know it and we're in the midst of it, when you're like that, it's really difficult, in my opinion, to do it with somebody that you love. First of all, that's why it's easier doing it with therapy and coaching, but then to be aware and be able to go counterintuitive to yourself in a sense to say, okay, I'm willing to go against myself or what I think is myself, which kind of leads into what happened. We think we have these parts, we have these processes, and they've been with us for so long that we identify with them. We think they're us. And Kathy had a pretty amazing experience where she said,
I'm not sure exactly what triggered I started talking about your website, and yesterday we've been talking about redesigning Mark's website and putting it into a new theme that's easier for him to use, easier for me to use. And so I started creating the website on a staging server, but I didn't want to, and so it was like half done on the staging server.
What's a staging server, just in case people
It's just
don't
a
know
place,
what that is?
It's a hidden place where I can show you what I'm working on, but the whole world doesn't see it. It's not on the live server. You don't go to Mark J. Ryan and see it all.
But it's still up in a form of what it's going to look like when it does get live.
Right. It's a staging place. It's a place where you set up the stage and you can see it.
All right.
Everybody can see how beautiful it all is. Yeah. And so I was working on that. It was like mostly done, for the most part. But then the process of moving it from the staging server to the live server can be somewhat of a pain in the butt. So I decided I was mad at you. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm not going to go through that whole process. I'm just going to do it. And so I used that anger energy because I was mad at you. And I just went to the live server and I just tore the site down. The data was all still there. I know what I'm doing. It's not like I'm destroying things.
Yes, you've been doing this for
20 years. So I tore down the old site, took out the old theme, put the new theme in there, and just started replicating stuff in a way that was easier for me than, the perfect way of, accommodating Mark's views and everything. I was just doing it the way I wanted to do it, and he could change it later type of thing. I was just getting it done without trying to accommodate. And so as we start talking about, in the argument this morning, we started talking about what I had done and how freeing it felt for me to just do it the way I wanted to do it and not having to think about accommodating you or how you wanted it to be and that you can fix that later if you don't like it type of thing. I just did it the way I wanted to.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oddly, that when I kept talking about accommodation, I kept going back to the left side. I kept going to the remembered side, right? To
yes.
But when I'm talking about the new side, I realize I'm actually like using hand gestures and pointing at both places. And as I'm doing that, the distinction is starting to wake up within me that the creative side felt really free for me to just do what I wanted to do, and I hope it's okay with you, and if it's not, we'll fix it there, rather than the past where I have been very accommodating. And then the pattern starts just like kind of unraveling, and I start seeing that my accommodation of you and everybody else and the processes that I went through in order to do all of this accommodation was very draining to me and did not accommodate me at all. Accommodated everybody else in my world, but didn't accommodate me. And I actually had a little trick that I was playing on myself and playing on others of kind of racking up these accommodation points of I've done all of these things for you, you see, so therefore you must do all of these things for me, where I kind of like in my own mind keep other people hostage of what I want from them and keep myself safe from other people pushing me around because I've got all of these accommodation points and I can just go, cash them in, right? So I start seeing all of this, and then I realize that, some of the arguments we were having about, these cats that we're fostering, and Mark's like pretty much done with the cat fiasco that's been happening a little bit longer than we had originally thought, but I want to continue on through it, and I want Mark to accommodate me in this, which he's doing because I've accommodated him, and so it's like becomes this accounting system. And I started seeing this pattern for what it was and seeing it as this pattern and seeing it as a game I was playing with myself and playing with other people that wasn't necessarily... It was just a lot easier, like with the website, to just cut to the chase, do what I wanted to do, and hope that's okay with you. That felt so much better. And I've been doing these coaching sessions with people, and the energy seems to flow there of like, okay, this is what's coming through, and this is how things are working. And I'm not like trying to super accommodate anybody. It's just like I'm really in the flow of my spirit when these sessions are going on, and it's almost like this higher spirit than me, than my conscious mind, is flowing through me when those sessions happen. And I recognize that the same type of, like there's this creative energy flowing through me, and it's this huge gift for myself. It's my huge gift for other people. It's a gift for the people that I'm helping. It's a gift for your website. Is all of that energy is flowing in a gift kind of way, but it's not an accommodation kind of way. It's not like I'm trying to rack up points to keep me safe.
Right. And that was kind of like how does Kathy get there? And I think that when the reason people need coaching, why I need coaching, why Kathy needs coaching is because we see it from a different perspective as we're experiencing it. We don't realize what the coach is doing if the coach recognizes what's happening, what words they may say, what actions, like, okay, right now look up to the right while you're saying that to me. And then to be able to recognize, like with Kathy, I saw it clearly. I not only saw it, but I felt it. It was really powerful. Where I asked her a certain question about where I saw her putting her hands, and she kind of shaped it in a ball, and she was doing this unconsciously as she was talking to me, but being trained to see this kind of stuff and listen and hear different things. I hear her identifying this ball, and I'm like, wow, right now she's outside of it. That identity of that ball is not inside of her. She has just now shown. So if I can help her become aware of that part, that it's not her, that it's something, It's a pattern. We said virus, or we come up with the word. It's a virus that runs through us that causes us to think a certain way. But when it does, a little bit ago, I'm looking for the microphone that we have. And I was upstairs, and the microphone is sitting on a little stand. And I'm upstairs, and I'm looking for this thing. And I looked downstairs, and I went back, and it was just kind of one of these little gorilla stands that you can move all around that's holding the mic up with. But I went back upstairs, and I'm by my computer on the desk there, and I just stood there because I'm like, I could feel it in my body. That thing was there. But I couldn't see it. And I stuck with it, and I started to say, well, maybe I did leave it in Arizona the last couple months ago. And I'm like, no, I know I saw it. And I just stayed there, and I just kept looking. And where I was looking, I could not see it. But then all of a sudden, I'm like, I know it's here. And my eyes started to focus differently, and there it was, exactly where I was looking at it. But what happens is our belief systems are so strong, so powerful, that if we believe a certain way, we see things, and we also delete. We delete, distort, and generalize information, so we only see what we believe that we can see at the time. But by staying with it a little bit, and that's kind of what was happening with Kathy. Kathy, in what we all do, and I'm saying Kathy, but this is all of us, me. I got into this because I realized how much I do it to myself, and I cleared some things like, wow, I want to do a bunch of that. This is really cool. And 30 years later, I'm still doing it. But what happened was, at that point, when I said, do you recognize that part? But I had to bring her over back to the right. And this is coaching, and it can get complicated, but if you're trained in it, it becomes more of an art. To see and say, how can I get the resources that are in that other part of where she was looking, but also have her identify that part at the same time. So from her creative side, she could see the what was going on, that part that was in a ball. And then all of a sudden, she could see it as being apart from her. So no longer was she that. That was now a part of her that was accessing her resources, her body, to run this virus pattern, so to speak. And she separated from it. And seeing that, it was almost like watching somebody wake up from something. You see, talk about the Matrix and everything. And that's one of the reasons I do this, because when people do get it and they do wake up, it's like, wow, man, this is so cool. And I'm like, she could feel it and she could sense it. And then I asked her, I said, can you describe it to me? Well, for her to describe it to me, she can't be in it. She has to be looking at it. And this is part of the new product that I have, the forgiveness and love and the perceptual positions, is for her to be able to look at it from a distance, whether it's any little bit of distance, as long as it's not. And she perfectly described my experience of living with this part, so to speak, for 8 years. But she wasn't identified with it. She hadn't, because she was feeling so good in her construct, in her creative part, in her imagination, that part now was not required for it anymore. So what I'm getting to is that if we look at baseball, and we got the home plate, first base, second base, third base, we think we have to go through a certain process. I have to go through this. I have to feel like, I'm having to accommodate people, which then it gets to a point like nobody ever gets up to the points that I need, which then gets me angry, which is second base. And then third base, well, I'm just going to do it myself, and then feels like it's home base. And I'm like, you don't have to go through all those negative emotions to experience it. That's there available for you to do anyways. And she got it. And then all of a sudden the creative part of her mind, as quick as Kathy's mind is, as smart as she is, it was just amazing to watch this processing and to get it and to see it kind of now locked down into an identity of creative Kathy, instead of what the accommodating Kathy felt like it had to do. So now we kind of create two different parts that are separate, where she can go in and step into the creative Kathy, the constructed part of her mind, and be that without having to go she can just be on home base all the time and feel like she hit a home run. Yeah. And that's my description, but go ahead.
We kind of create these things to keep ourselves safe, don't we?
That's exactly what it is. From the time we're children, we learn to use our mind in whatever way we can. You think of the trauma work that we've both done, and people that are in trauma, and they create these little things as kids, and they're doing the best they can in these little places. And whatever that place is, it doesn't matter. It's how they get in there and how they get out. all of us as human beings have certain ways of thinking. We process information in very similar ways. And if you can see how they processed it and what they're leaving out, and that's, again, what we do as a coach is to say, what are you missing, and help fill in the gaps with resources. But go ahead, you were going to say.
So, like when I was a kid, getting our needs met as children was not always an easy thing.
No, that's
so
right.
You get really good at creating little games that you can play, and if they worked once, you try it again, and then you keep trying, and then all of a sudden it becomes this unconscious thing. And maybe I picked it up from my mother, who also went through, kind of a difficult childhood too, and she had her ways of getting her needs met. And I may have just like, oh, well, that's how we do things then. And so that was the way I just kind of picked up of like, okay, this pattern then becomes like the number one tool in your toolbox to get what you need and to keep yourself safe no matter what's going on around you. And you internalize it to the point where it becomes such a part of you that you think it is you. You think
it's the hammer and nail.
That's just this is how things work, and this is how you are in relation to this part that is me. And so then, everything that you see in your world outside of you you kind of see it through those glasses of that pattern. That's
perfect. That's exactly right. If all you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail.
Right.
But if you start to get a screwdriver and you start to get drills and different, you get a full toolbox, and that's what we're doing is like saying, okay, this person doesn't have this drill. They need to drill. You don't need to, be hammering a nail through a hole to try to make holes. There's a thing called drill that'll do it a lot more usefully. Yes, you can use this hammer to drive that nail through and create a hole. But if you use a drill, it's going to work a lot better, a lot more efficiently and easily. And the thing is, people will resist you if they don't know it yet. But if you can give them the experience of a drill and drill the hole through the board, and then they can do it themselves and realize, oh my gosh, I can do it. They will pick it up in an instant. I mean, just boom, just like that, they'll get it.
As long as they know it's safe.
Exactly, it's got to be safe. So
because if it's not safe, they're gonna have to see it working and feel it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why. I mean, because I've known I've had this pattern before I met you. I think I very quietly admitted it very quietly, not really publicly, of like, oh my gosh, I've got this whole martyr thing going on, and can you look at all the things that I've done for you? And I knew that this was coming up, but I thought, well, I could just work with it, mask it, and what was my point?
No, that's okay. It's about the resources that you have,
right? But so if you don't feel like if it's safe, but your spirit will constantly bring it up to you and constantly give you people, situations, experiences that are going to show you the pattern over and over again. And that pattern's going to get triggered and it's going to work. And that pattern's going to get triggered and it's going to work. And then it's going to get triggered and then it's going to cause pain. And then it's going to cause some more pain. And then it's going to, because you're being shown that it's not working for you anymore.
Yeah.
And then when you can move to a new situation and use the drill, so to speak, and say, oh my God, that was so much easier. You mean I don't have to go through all that pain anymore? And then you can let go of the old thought virus, the old pattern, the old, and see, the thing is, it is kind of a piece of consciousness, because you're giving life, just like your computer gives life to a virus on your hard drive.
You feed it. Yeah, exactly.
You feed that virus. That virus cannot run unless your computer is on and your computer is giving energy to it. And so you, as a spiritual being, are giving energy to this pattern, and therefore you are giving it sort of a life of its own in a lot of ways. And my hands are getting hot, so that means I'm on the right track, right? So you are giving... You're
Kathy's hands get really hot when healing energy starts flowing through her. I mean, hot to the point where she used to do it with me, and I would say, you need to take your hands off. And she's like, I said, that's so hot, it's uncomfortable. But it's weird, if she would touch my feet, it wouldn't bother me. I actually would give me as much as you can of that. I would absolutely love it.
Yeah, but I don't like to touch your feet.
No, she doesn't like to touch my feet. But if it was good, she would rub my face. But the spiritual. Were you done? Were you still making a point? I don't know if.
Yeah, I think that's my point. Is that we are basically giving life to a new thought form, so to speak, by giving it energy. And as soon as you start putting your energy towards creative constructs on that side, and you step away from sort of those remembered things. Are kind of like programs. Everything on the remembered side is, because it's in your memory, it is kind of like a program.
Yes,
isn't
exactly.
it?
It's a program. It's a lot of times what we call them is nominalizations, and that means that basically it's kind of a solidified concept, so that we don't have, our thoughts are not solid, but in a sense, a nominalization is like a noun. We make something a noun, and it's say, I feel love. Well, love is a moving, continuing process that can't be boxed up, but we have this amazing ability in our brains to be able to kind of lock it up and make it locked up and block it off from other parts. And then we have an interpretation. Well, love means this. Love means you saying this. Love means you doing this. Love, and so we use these childhood, immature ways of thinking about it to kind of stop it from flowing. And so a lot of times with the coaching, we'll find some kind of a still picture that'll be in there. It's a not moving picture, still concept. And what we want to do is break that, find out where it is, what it is. And we talk about these. I mean, there's thousands. I've been working on this for 30 years and just keep opening up more and more and more. But it's to get those thoughts and concepts that are stuck and isolated in the brain, to get them oxygen and have the virus, kind of up against the resources of other parts of your brain. And we start to open that up, and then the virus doesn't have a specific area to attack. And I'm saying virus so you can get a better understanding of it.
It's a good analogy, I think.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of like that.
It works like that. But
it isn't you, and it isn't like a life form of its own, but when you run it, it does have a life of its own.
Yeah, exactly. When you give it energy, it does have a life in it. And it's kind of like inanimate beings. But go from the spiritual perspective, we go back to what Buddha says, all suffering comes from desire. And, just recently, I've heard that for I don't know how many years, since I read Siddhartha when I was a kid, and we talked about that in school. I mean, this is grade school. They had us reading Siddhartha. And recently, all of a sudden, it changed the meaning of it. And that's what a lot of this is about, the new product, the timeless forgiveness and love, and the perceptual positions. The meanings of words that have certain things about what is suffering, what is desire. And then I realized, wow, desire is I want her to respond to me in this way, or I suffer. I want him to respond to me in that way, or I suffer. And really, the suffering is our interpretation, because in the world it just is. What's going on with people in China and India right now that are fighting and everything like that, I would look at it, if I saw two people speaking in a foreign language and I didn't understand a word they'd said, I might be entertained by the same thing and going, God, they kind of look funny, or they sound funny doing it. Well, not in English. But if I heard it in English and then it was my family members, all of a sudden it takes on a different nominalization, a different meaning, that all of a sudden now I want it to be another way. I want it to be something different, and I'm willing to do my patterns and fight and argue, whatever it takes, manipulate, persuade. And what I'm realizing is it's not about us doing that with other people. It's going inside and looking at what the word suffering is. Suffering in itself is a force, like gravity, that all of us have, and that it's there. It's not going away. But if we look at it and look and say it's not something meant to take things away from us. So let's say somebody gets rich and everything, like they figure it out, what they're doing, why we want money, a lot of us, and why we want it a certain way. We get enough money, we can have everything we want in a certain way. It'll be nice and tidy. And then what we do is we just isolate ourselves. My mom used to work as a hospice nurse down in Florida, and in a very wealthy part of Florida. And she says it was gated community, and she says these people, they've locked themselves down more and more in their life because they're getting what they want. They're suffering, but what they're doing is not going in looking at suffering as like gravity to say, what can I do to make this work for me? They feel like, suffering is falling down, scraping your knee all the time. Well, if you do it enough and you learn to walk, you stop scraping your knee. So if we look at suffering in a different way and the meaning of it, we can start to go into it and say, how does this work for me? If this is a force like gravity, I'm not using it properly. How do I use it properly and go in there for myself to say, what are my wants? What are my desires that are there. Kathy wanted safety in that aspect of it. She came to in which we all do, and usually goes very immature and goes back to going back into childhood, and that's age regression is what we call it, and that's one of the biggest hypnotic trance phenomena is age regression, and we go back to age regression and figure this stuff out. But what we really need to start doing is saying, stay with the suffering, what we call suffering, and say what's beyond it. And this is what I saw happen with Kathy. She was going through suffering, but she stayed with it and then saw that it wasn't really suffering at all, but her interpretation of it kind of brought suffering into the equation and made it suffering. These parts, these viruses, they're the ones that bring you suffering. When we're doing our coaching, we're doing our work, what we're saying is, how do we maybe take you out of suffering and bring you into another state, but more into the spiritual realm? How do you recognize this as something that you just interpreted a certain way, and by shifting your interpretation or handing it over to God or Spirit, the divine, whatever it is, and see? And that's what happened with the beautifully with the constructive part of what happened with Kathy, is that there was spirit entered into her. That creative part, that constructive, that's spirit. That is the divine entering in and taking care of a solution. And from that timeless part that comes in, this creative, it dissipates, it dissolves, it separates you from what we call viruses. And I've kind of gone on one of my rants there anyways, but
yeah, I'm used to it.
Yeah, you are. You're patient with me on that.
Well, it's the thought viruses, the patterns, they're all just based on erroneous beliefs that you don't live in a safe universe. And we do live in a safe universe, and when spirit enters in and you have that creative force, because we are all creative beings. That is the nature of who we are as spiritual beings. We are creatives. We are co-creators with the divine energy of the universe. And when that energy enters in, and when you are flowing with that energy, old beliefs dissolve. They just dissipate. Now, for example, I did a coaching session last week, and it started out, using astrology, which I've been using forever, and
both Western and Vedic astrology.
Right, but I stick mostly with the Vedic because it makes more sense to me, and I find it to be much more useful. But that's just another set of beliefs, right? So that's my little crutch.
Yeah.
So I start in with the astrology because it helps me understand people, and I find it to be highly accurate when I'm working with people.
It's agreed upon thing too. When it's like you're having a contract. Both people agree. Let's start off with your interpretation that I'm a Capricorn. What are you seeing?
Sure.
Now you got common ground, and then you always take it somewhere else and go a lot farther. And
that's where it starts. It starts with talking about beliefs within a belief system that works for both me and the person I'm working with. And so we work with astrology, but I'm finding that as I'm working with people, something else enters in. And, I'm trained Reiki master. Both of us are trained. You're level 4 Reiki master too,
trained.
right? Yeah, both of us are. But it's not like, I'm doing this like I am the Reiki master out there. But I use the energy in my. But it's just the energy, It's not necessarily that I have to do all of the symbols correctly or whatever. The energy just flows, and I think being trained as a Reiki master, you just learn that's the energy. Okay, I can recognize it.
Can I just make a quick comment on that? The reason I did it was because Spirit kept telling me to go touch people and lay my hands on people and talk to them, and it'd be a trade show, sports and gun. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Then when I realized that John and Julie at that point, Julie Silverthorne and Ed, my buddy Ed and Georgie, they were kind of like, why don't you do Reiki? And then it's like, yeah, that gives me, and I don't really have to touch them. I can keep my hands above them. So it was a tool for me to be able to, and it did teach me a little bit about focus and that energy. But that's why I learned it. And it sounds to me like you're saying something similar, that it's there as a tool. But what happens, happens.
Well, whatever, but you then start to recognize the energy, and you recognize that, when I was trained, I learned very quickly that I was sick when I went to the first training, and we started practicing with the energy, and then I got attuned, and the sickness just got really
cold or something, or a flu?
Yeah, it was like a flu, and it got really, really strong, and then it was gone. And It was so weird that I had to take notice that there was something definitely there. So I'm noticing now when I'm working with people that this energy, whether it's the Reiki energy or if it's just, I think it's just spirit personally, because we've we did the matrix energetics thing, and
Sure.
that was the same
San Diego,
force.
yep.
It was the same force that was working when we were working with people. I felt it was the same type of energy movement that was happening. And so as I'm working with people, I start with the astrology, and then all of a sudden, all of this other energy starts coming in, and then I start just, words start flowing, and I'm not even sure what I'm saying, and that I don't even know. Like, I have to go listen to the recording of the session that I did most recently, because I don't even remember the second half of it, because it just started flowing.
Well, can I stop you? Just think
so
about
weird.
what you're saying.
What?
I didn't remember.
I didn't. I
So
don't.
you weren't in that part of your brain.
I
Your
wasn't.
whole brain was being used for the creative part of who you are.
Right.
And it doesn't need to remember because it knows it's always there.
Right.
So there's not memory required.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. So that does feed into all of the
Oh,
stuff
yeah,
we
absolutely.
experienced.
That's why when I sit there and I tell you, like, I keep forgetting things and I'm not remembering and stuff isn't there. I used to watch that with some of my spiritual teachers, and they're like, I have no idea what I was saying. Why? Because you're using your whole self, your being, your spirit, not to remember stuff. You know that it's there and it's timeless. It's always going to be there. You can access it any time, and it takes care of the situation. You don't have to worry about remembering stuff. You don't have to prepare yourself for safety.
Right.
Because spirit is always there.
Right.
And you just, the only thing you have to remember is that spirit's always there, and you just go into it and enter into it, and that part of your brain isn't. Now, if you're remembering about building websites, yeah, that's when memory comes in handy.
Right, or accounting
or whatever, like yeah. Real accounting.
Real.
But I interrupted you. I'm sorry. That point there, I thought it was really profound.
No, that's what I wanted to talk to you about.
Yeah.
Is what, because I did feel like the sessions that I've been doing with people related to what happened with us this morning. That there was a relation, because I could feel my energy when I got the distinction between why I was angry with you and the creative force of building your website out, and then also the creative force of working with people. That's where I want to be. I want to be in that energy, and that's what I've been looking for, and that's what I enjoy, and that's the kind of websites I like to build, when it's just like, okay, tear everything down and let's just build it the way we want it to be, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to follow procedures, and there's no restriction placed on it. It just flows, and it works so much better and so much faster. And I think that's the healing energy, is the same force of creative energy flowing as co-creators with spirit in manifesting this world that we're all in the midst of shaping. And I think maybe that's why all of this is becoming very it's just becoming crystal clear to me right now, is because we are going through this shift energetically on the planet. So many more people are waking up to who they really are, that it's
waking up to who they don't want to be.
Yes. Yes.
I don't want to be this person anymore.
I don't want to be this person anymore. And but what is it that I want to be?
Yes.
And they don't know how to move into that creative force.
Well, let's just take that real quick, because they're trying to remember something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist because it's got to come out of the creative part.
Right.
So they're using the safety of, like, I got to go back and remember how to use this safety. Who do I want to be? But they can't. They can't, because it's in the creative, so it has to be something. So it's really fine of, like, looking people on trapezes. You know, there's a certain point where they got to let go of one trapeze to grab onto the other trapeze.
Yes.
And I think our work is to give them a place of safety in uncertainty, that time in between, to be able to let go of one and grab on the other and go, I got my drill, I can drill a hole, this is much better, wow, this is great.
Yeah, but eventually that drill's not going to work for them anymore, because it's going to move into the remembered, isn't it?
Because that's exactly right. But and then what we do is we try to then use that, and the process is that we have to have this fine line between how long we stay on one trapeze for to be able to move to the next trapeze. That's because we're in flow. We're an energy flow process, and there's a part of us that wants to associate safety with holding on to something.
Yes.
A memory, a thought, a past, a concept.
Right.
And our creative brain never stops creating. We just determine that we're going to create in the safety way. We're going to create memories. We're using this beautiful gift that we have, the spiritual gift of the creative process, for something that slows us down, like a river that flows, but then they have those little eddies that spin and stuff like that. And what happens is that when we use the creative gift for anything else other, what we want to say, well, I got spirit and it's all flowing and it's all present, but I kind of want to give it a little bit more of another level of safety. And then we start to go into an eddy and we spin, and we're using our creative process, but not in the way the creative process was meant to go.
Sure.
We're now using it for something that becomes destructive. And people could build careers and bank accounts off of that, because they think, well, if I just get a little bit more money and I get another bigger house, or I'm doing that. But if money all went away, what would happen? Where would you be? What would you do then? If money just kind of disappeared, or we realized the dollar was like the Zimbabwe dollar that went to, you carrying around trillions of dollars and they're worth nothing.
Right.
What do you do then? So it's just an aspect of safety instead of the flow.
The sun is still going to shine,
Exactly.
and the sky's still going to be blue, and everything's always going to be okay. And actually, maybe the next creative process is going to be even better than what we've had before.
Yeah, and it always
is, though, isn't it?
It is better, and I think it's making those distinctions, because what we have a tendency to do is look at something as a whole. You looked at that process today as a whole, and what we did is we broke it down into parts, and it fell apart. You separate it. It couldn't stay in you like when we made little distinctions about it. And this is, again, folks, what we do with the coaching, both of us. You make those little distinctions about it. It then can't be the same thing it was. It doesn't. It can't. It's like a pair of shoes. It's like you make your feet bigger and they don't fit in the same shoes anymore. You expanded. Now you can't fit in the same shoes, and you're trying to fit in the same shoe. It doesn't happen. It does.
We've outgrown it.
You've outgrown
Just
it.
like with all the changes that are happening in the world, we've outgrown a lot of the systems that worked for us 50 years ago. But they don't work for us anymore as humanity, as beings of. Everybody's waking up to this creative flow that's within us, and we're getting all of these, like phones and tools that are allowing us to be more creative. I mean, I think that's the greatest gift of technology, is it's giving everybody a voice. It's giving everybody the ability to be creative, to make movies, to make podcasts, to make music, all in the palms of their hands, and everybody gets to do that now. So there's really no need for people to go sit in cubicles and add numbers together. Yeah. There's no need for that. So the system has to change in order to accommodate. Ooh, there's my favorite word.
But it was in a much cleaner,
cleaner way.
No, but an expanded way.
Yes,
accommodating in an expanded way. It wasn't a limited accommodation. It was an expanded. accommodation.
It was an accommodation for points.
Yes,
trying to score points in the accommodation game doesn't really work out. But when you're being accommodated by a system, the old system wants to accommodate a limited humanity, and the new system will accommodate a larger humanity. It has to. And it's being created right now, I think, in one framework, in the spiritual framework, and it'll start showing up here more and more. Yeah. And that's what we'll be plugging into. So there's really no fear of the old dissipating, because the new is being reborn right now.
Well, you still have, I think the only distinction I would make with that is that I still think that there are the parts that are going to try to stay along with the ego. Like, I watched something the other night about this guy, and he was talking about the creative and what's going on with creativity and how it's expanding and it's going into this certain area. But there was something in it where I'm going like, yeah, but this feels incomplete somehow, some way. Then I realized, I get what it is. He's not including spirit in this. He's including just man in this. And it's kind of like saying, okay, here's a bunch of water that comes out of a river. We don't know where it's coming from, how it was created, where it came from. But I'm going to take this river and I'm going to do all this stuff now with the water that's there, and I'm going to create from that. I stop the flow. I'm going to say, this came from me. I invented this. This is mine. And disregard the fact of where it flowed in from and where it was flowing out to, and including spirit in it. So I think that that's where we get off track as human beings, is that where's the attribution going to? What are we attributing this to? And are we attributing it to the spirit and the flow and the idea of, like, when you get into your creativity and you don't have to remember it? But where a lot of times what science does is it wants to pull it out and just pull it out from its hole and separate it and say, what can we do within this, without giving the attribution to the spirit that created it. But to say, let's flip this and do all this stuff with creativity, but we're going to try to keep out the idea that spirit or divine was involved in this in any way and separate it. And I think that's an analogy for what we do inside of ourselves. We tried with the ego tries to separate it from the whole.
Right.
And it becomes an issue, and the work that we do is to bring it back into the whole.
Right. The holistic self,
rather than
compartmentalizing it down into, okay, here's one, you are like just focusing on the physical body and saying, all you are good for is running, or all you are good for is putting together a car.
That's right.
And not saying, not only can you put together a car, you could design a car, and you can really, where's the creative force there? But a lot of people, they want a car. It's safe to be compartmentalized.
Sure.
Because where is that flow going to take them? And people have a lot of fear. They don't want to go with that whole flow or the holistic.
Well, let's just consider the aspect of what is the relationship. When they go into fear, the relationship becomes an isolated system, so you're relating within yourself. There's no longer the relationship of where it came from initially. There's not a relationship with the creator, with the creative spirit. So it goes for a little while. It separates it. That was the thing that I always got when they talked about the Garden of Eden. I was like, okay, the story of the garden, what is this about? And God said, surely this day you will die if you eat from this tree. Well, they ate from it and they didn't die. But people used to live forever, and it's a metaphor. The metaphor was you've just separated, you've made your own decision and brought something else into it that isolates me from it. So yes, it still is going to be alive for a little while, but sooner or later, the creek, when you dam off the river, it'll keep flowing downstream for who knows how long.
Right.
We don't know the lights in the universe, the planets that are still stars are shining light here. Are they still? Yeah, they could have been gone. Yeah. So yes, it will live for a while, but eventually it will be cut off. And I think that if we got to bring this back into the connection, because the force, the flow, the life in it that brings this shift, this change in who we are, is a continual process. It can't be little spurts and it's timeless. It's timeless. Back to timeless again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So cool. So what else? Is there anything else where you still...
I feel pretty complete. I feel like this was really good.
Yeah. Good introduction for the timeless forgiveness and love, and then the perceptual positions. And I've really got... I've just done a flow. It's flowing, me connecting back, and then the next one I'm going to be doing that's coming up, which will be really cool too. So, but I just wanted to share with you guys in the audience and you girls and ladies in the audience what happened today. Kathy actually encouraged me. I was kind of thinking, well, it's really private. Maybe she doesn't want to go into it, but no, she was not affected. This is the beauty of it, affected by that virus part that would maybe have kept her from that, but now the creative part is like, no, let's share this with the world. This is really sweet.
Money like speed, right?
Oh yeah, her body, huh? I didn't think you were going to bring that into it, but I'm glad we said it in a humorous way. Money like speed, everybody.
No, I just feel like, we talk about so many things that we want to do. You and I are like crazy idea generators, and we're always coming up with, hey, let's try this. Hey, let's do this. Hey, let's do this other thing. And I kind of feel like, especially with stuff like this, that it's really important to go with the flow of the energy that's flowing right here, right now. And while we were talking, it was just like, no, this is good stuff.
We don't have to remember it. We can just be in it.
Just let it flow. And if it helps other people and they get some value from it, great. If not, so what? It's just we're contributing to whatever, if it helped you. We'd like to hear, though. We like to hear if you got anything of value from this. We'd like to hear. If you have any other thoughts, we like to hear back from people. And if not, well, thanks for listening to this point anyway.
Anyways. But you just gave me something really nice, too, because what I'm realizing is that's the same thing. That's why I've been having so much trouble. I've been trying to create products the same way I used to create products from memory, but I've been so much into this flow, as we have been on this conversation that we've had that you've listened in on, that by the time I go back to try to remember what it is that I want to do, I'm already in another flow that's flowing out. So it's kind of like Kathy's been saying, you got to do more and more podcasts, and I'm like, I'll probably stop creating products because it's just going to be one continuous flow of information.
Well, what if that was the case? What if it was just a continuous flow of information and, people wanted to say, hey, you know what? You got like a coaching session every day from doing that. That would be, you'd enjoy that.
Oh, absolutely would enjoy it. I just, I get locked up in the idea of like, with the flow of information, what am I going to do if to make sure our rent is paid and we're feeding, and that's stuff I got to work on too. Is to
but
let that flow.
If you're letting it flow, then the flow. Didn't you just tell me that the flow just keeps coming if you keep it flowing?
Correct. It's the bankers I'm worried about.
Our good friends at the bank.
But
yes.
we won't go into that on this podcast. So, anyways, Kathy, you feel pretty complete with this, or is there anything else you want to add or say?
No, I think this was really awesome. This was fun.
Yeah, it was very much fun. We should do this more often now in the flow, because there has been no past. It's always been the now, right?
There is only the now.
So thanks for listening, everybody. Like Kathy said, I'd love to hear back some comments, suggestions, ideas, thoughts. If you'd like to hear more of this, and also if you didn't like it or stuff you didn't like, tell us. We're into it, but we pretty well know our audience, and we're hoping that you can get the same flow in your life, and call one of us, either Kathy or I, if you vibrate or resonate, and you want to explore some of this and the tools that we know and how to do it. We'd be more than happy to work with you. So thanks for doing this, honey, and I appreciate it, and look forward to doing some more with you.
Cool. Love you.
Love you too. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.